I attended my mother's funeral a week ago. I just found out the coffin was empty, dead outside our front door. That was how my mother was found one dreary September morning. Murdered, the police say, but no one to pin the crime to. Looking back, I should have taken the signs more seriously. My mother was constantly looking out the window into the woods, biting her nails nervously as if something out there worried her. She even checked the doors every night to make sure they were locked tight after dinner. My father and I brushed it off as perhaps just a simple paranoia, but obviously it wasn't. Looking at her state, you wouldn't think it was the work of the killer due to the absence of any wounds or abrasions on her skin. Instead, she'd been suffocated. Saying that my world was absolutely ripped away from me would be an understatement. At that time in my life, I didn't think things could become more horrendous than they already were, but I couldn't have been more wrong. In fact, the death of my mother would be the least of my problems. Since my mother had not been brutally disfigured in any way, my father decided the funeral would be an open casket. I must say, as much as I missed my mother and wanted her back, I didn't want to see her in a state of death. I already unwillingly had to when I left to get the mail that morning, and it left a feeling inside my stomach that I don't think I'll ever get to go away. It was the night before the funeral that I first heard the tapping. It started around 10 o'clock p.m., and it was coming from right outside my window. Tap, 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 tap. The tapping pattern came in pairs of two. At first I thought it might be a branch bumping up against the pane until the thought entered my head. Could it be the killer? My whole body tensed up, and it felt as if my heart was beating in my head. Without thinking it all the way through, I ripped my curtains open to observe what was producing the noise. I stared through my window, and to my surprise, I saw nothing. Just the wide open backyard and the forest outline. I decided it must have been a small animal or something, and I rolled back over to sleep. I prayed the whole morning that the funeral would be normal, that things would be okay, and that I would feel some sort of closure on the whole matter. However, something happened that turned my world upside down. Everyone was sitting when Father Andy opened the coffin to reveal my mother, or where my mother should have been at least. To all of our horror, the coffin was completely empty. I remember everyone standing up all at once, as if an electric current had gone through all of our seats at the same time. In a second, the room turned from silent to filled with gasps and cries of rage. It was clear as day. She'd been taken. My father was on the phone all night with the funeral home and the police. Another investigation for my mother was on its way, and they hadn't even solved the first one. The funeral had obviously been postponed, and I was starting to feel numb from it all. That night, it happened again. The tapping resurfaced. The same time as last, 10 p.m., I awoke to the sound of it coming from my window. Tap, 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 tap. My heart leaped up into my throat. Not again. I pulled my pillow over my head and did my best to go back to sleep. Tap, 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 tap. It was as if the tapping was getting louder. My fear turned to aggression very quickly, and I threw my pillow off of my head. I pounded my fist up against the pane, still guarded by my curtains. "Knock it off," I yelled. The noise stopped. I breathed a sigh of relief and brought my pillow back up to its spot. Tap, 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 tap. "Are you kidding me?" I didn't get the rest of the sentence out of my mouth as the horrible realization came over me. The tapping wasn't coming from outside my window, it was coming from inside my closet. Without another second passing, I found myself trembling in fear, pushed up against my bedroom wall. Whatever was inside must have been figured out. I knew it was there as my door began to slowly creak open. I had several guesses of what could be hiding on the other side, but not in a million years would I have guessed what was actually the true cause of the noise. Standing in the doorframe was no other than my mother. "Mom!" My voice squeaked. The longer I stared at her, the more she looked unreal. Like when you're staring at an AI that looks almost human, but isn't quite. Her mouth turned upward into a wide grin, and very quickly I knew it was not the same mother that I remembered. The thing took a step towards me, and what I saw made me sick to my stomach. It was a person wearing my mom's skin. It took another step towards me, and I further pushed myself up against the wall. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I was frozen in fear. "It's all right, darling." Their voice was a mix of my mother and what sounded like an ancient old man. "We can be together now." As the person neared closer to me, they began peeling my mother's skin flesh off of their own, revealing their true face. However, it wasn't human. I can't describe it, but the creature that stared back at me was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I now know why, for all those years, my mother was so paranoid about what lay in the woods. "What are you?" I asked as it closed in on me, my mother's skin oozing off of its own flesh like slime. I took the window of time that I had left and pushed past the thing, running into the hallway. At the very end of it, my dad stood staring at me. Thank God, I thought. "Dad, run! Get help now!" Instead of running, my dad only smiled, or tried to at least. Even his skin seemed to struggle to cooperate. He wasn't moving, he was just smiling. I heard more tapping behind me. It got closer and I ran as fast down the stairs as I possibly could. As soon as I was halfway down the stairs, someone grabbed my arm. I turned. It was my father's skin. Someone grabbed my other arm. It was my mother's skin. I couldn't move. Their grip was inescapable. They both leaned up to my separate ears, whispering the same exact thing. "It's okay, darling. We can be together now."